Okay.
Roger, your camera is not up to par.
Right. But I don't know why.
I have gone to great lengths.
I know. I got it. Don't go there.
To get myself on camera.
Uh-huh.
For you, Roger. It's all for you. Some of the other podcasts that we do, they've asked me to turn my camera off. Now, what's that about?
Yeah, hang on.
Do we need to send a engineer technician?
Possibly, because I don't know why.
I guess it wouldn't hurry you up to say that our podcast clock is ticking, Roger. It's ticking.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, can you see me right now?
Yeah.
I got a new watch for Christmas. And boy, did I need one. I've been using my iPhone for several months, waiting for Christmas to get here so I could get a new watch. And I got it.
I think I did.
Roger, I've got my best people on it.
Good. Well, I just took my picture.
Oh, wait a minute. Do what?
See if you can.
Oh.
No, I don't think that'll do anything. No, you can't click on it. That's his end.
When in doubt, boot the whole system.
Roger, here is a podcast term, podcast and or broadcast. We will stand by.
I never could do that.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, we got another Roger Dykes Just Sayin podcast, and we are in the middle of some technical negotiations here as we get Roger ready to go and hooked up. Roger Dykes, are you there?
I am here, sir, ready and willing and able and all that stuff.
Can you see me?
I can see you, sir.
In living digital color.
Probably HD for that matter.
In the opulent A-Team PR Studio A. This is where the big stuff happens, Roger.
I know, and I'm honored to get to come in.
We might as well tell folks that the reason why we're talking like this is because this day, as we sat down to do this for the first time ever, after my camera is up and running, Roger's camera is not working. And we have just spent the last half hour or so working with it, but we don't have an engineer on site where Roger's at, and he's done everything he knows, including the fix-all deal, Roger. You turned your computer off and then turned it back on.
Yes, sir. That is absolutely true. And it did absolutely no good at all.
Oh, man. Oh, well, we are podcast capable. Even so, and we were going to choose this edition of our podcast to be able to, on the YouTube channel, go back and forth and from the live headshots of both of us in the podcast and then the artwork and so on and so forth. And we were going to be editing it a different way this time, but we'll stick to the old way for now. And maybe next time, in 3 weeks, we'll have everything running.
Well, we hope so. Okay. I hope to have it ready before 3 weeks, but we may not.
We got a big show.
I know it. I'm looking forward.
We got stuff lined up on this show.
Of course we do.
Is this the one where we were going to do the 2022 version of the show where you do a little music, you do a little singing on the show?
And I'm glad it's not working. And so are the listeners.
Hey, let's kick this off, all right?
All right.
Hello, I'm Michael Shawn, and welcome to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. Roger Dykes is a teacher and counselor with a master's degree in family counseling from Texas Tech University. He is the owner of UV Blake Records and has written a book titled Non-Persons Rolling in a Normal World. And there's a few more things. Roger was born with cerebral palsy. Now a quadriplegic, he has been confined most of his life to a wheelchair. And for a while, even enjoying a career as a stand-up or sit-down comedian and after-dinner speaker. Disabled? Yes, but you forget about that pretty quickly because Roger thrives. So here is Roger Dykes.
All right. Well, it's good to be back with you, Michael. Glad you could join me. Glad the podcast listeners could join me. What do you think we're going to do today, Michael? You've got this long list of possibilities out there. What did you decide on?
Now, when you say stuff like that, people don't realize the name of the show is Roger Dykes Just Sayin. I'm kind of just a sidekick here.
Well, you're the sidekick that directs what I'm to say about.
You make all of the decisions, you know. You're the big decision maker. We decided that way back in the beginning.
That's probably why my camera's not working. I should never be left responsible for anything.
You know, I am going to say something, and I know that you gave me strict instructions only yesterday. You said, of course, this is not something I want to talk about on the podcast, but you know, every time you do that, you know, sometimes I will countermand those decisions and only let me soften it just a little bit, Roger. I don't want you to get worried, but I can't help but notice that it happened again, and that is over the holidays. For those of you who, I don't know when you're going to be listening to this podcast, but the last 2 or 3 days prior to us recording this podcast was Christmas and the Christmas vacation period, so to speak, for whether it's caregivers or whatever, which always a little tricky for Roger to get through that. And you got in a bind. Can we just say that? Will you just admit to that?
Yes, sir.
You got in a bind, and if people don't know what we're talking about by that, basically the short version is did not have care or caregivers available to you. If it were not for some good old friends that came by and helped out, and even with that, you still wound up in a bit of a bind at least one night, I know. And,
yes, sir.
And this all boils back to the same thing. It all gets back to the fact that the system set up the way it is not about even necessarily more money. What it's about is your capability to move and adjust. On one hand, they tell you, okay, you're going to run this. You're going to be the captain of your ship. You're going to decide who comes, who goes, when they come, when they go, so on and so forth. Yet, as the weeks, months, years, and decades rolled by, when there is no adjustment made of any type, and we've been explaining this on podcast after podcast. I'm not going to go into it all right now, but those conditions, and folks that listen for the first time, go back and listen to other podcasts. You'll hear what we're talking about, but those conditions still exist. And what it boiled down to, I think it was yesterday, Roger, you and I were talking on the phone a little bit, and this is so frustrating. You know, Roger was just telling me, and I'm going to tell you this, folks, because Roger won't. I mean, he is not helpless, and he doesn't want to appear helpless, yet quite often the way the state does things puts him in a helpless situation. And by that, and Roger, you can jump in here anytime you want, but I just want to say that yesterday you were explaining to me the circumstances that you were in for 2 or 3 days. As a friend of Roger Dykes, the first thing you think, well, we need to do something about this. We need to change this so that you can have the help that you need to just be able to go to bed at night and have someone help you get up and get out of bed. Did you listen to the intro and outro on this show, folks? He is a quadriplegic, which means he does not have the use of his legs or really his arms or hands. Very small use, if any. And so you can't just fix yourself something to eat. You can't just use the restroom. You can't just do all the things that we take for granted without a caregiver to help you. He doesn't require a caregiver 24 hours a day, but there are a few hours in every day and every night that he needs help. He legitimately needs help. Then along comes a thing like Christmas, and a caregiver that has been with him for years may want a day or two off. And it's not that Roger doesn't understand that. It's that he cannot live without the vital help that he gets from his caregivers. And the state does not allow him a backup, so to speak, someone that he can call. It's not going to be as inexpensive as the people who work day in and day out, but someone he can call and get in there. There are services like that, but the state will not allow that to happen. And if he has the money just to pay for it himself, the state will kick him off the program. And folks, it gets frustrating. It gets really frustrating because as a friend of Roger Dykes, you think, I got to do something about this. We need to help Roger. But the fact is, it takes a trained person quite often to help Roger. And the state has said, don't worry, Roger, we're going to take care of you. Everything's going to be all right. But it's not. Now, that being said, the real problem is how do you get anyone in Austin, Texas, to listen to this situation and care enough to do something about it? Roger, I think maybe I've said enough for the moment.
Well, while you were orating and waxing eloquent, I got the camera working.
You did, which means nothing to our listeners / viewers at this moment. But yes, you appeared. What happened? Did you plug it in?
It probably indicates I wasn't paying much attention to what you were saying. Okay. Yes, you are correct in what you're saying. It is a very challenging world because I get caught in the middle of not wanting to be a problem. I never want to be a problem. And I try to work my world to avoid being a difficulty for anyone more than I have to be. But the fact of the matter is, when holidays come around, everyone would like the holiday off. And I don't blame them. I understand that. And I've had caregivers who haven't had a Christmas off in several years because if Christmas falls on a day that they're supposed to work, I can't just say, well, you stay home. I won't need anything today. Anyway, unfortunately, I still need help. And there's no way around that. And I wish there was. But there is no, the state will say, you arrange it any way you want to. You're the boss. That's what they will say to me. And that's what the caregivers say to me is you're the boss. And I'm going, I wish I were. But the boss has alternatives that I don't have. And that's no one's fault. including mine. But this is where, and I know, as you said, we've talked about this seemingly incessantly over the last several months, but it still gets back to the same issue that it always does, and that is the program was designed for the clients to have family. And certainly on Christmas Day, the client would be expected to be with his family, and therefore the caregivers wouldn't be needed or as necessary as they would be any other day. I haven't got a solution to that yet. I'm working on it. I've got some ideas. But then again, as we've said so many times before, I cannot find the right person to talk to in Austin who can help fix this problem. I was talking to a person yesterday, and I said, I can get and I say this somewhat cavalierish, but I can get an audience with Governor Abbott. I've visited with Governor Abbott. We've visited before, and he's very nice. He's very pleasant. He's even understanding because of his situation. That doesn't get me in front of the. He honestly doesn't know who I need to talk to either because it's way below his pay grade. And so, trying to find that individual or that group of people who can actually listen and change things is what we're still looking for and have not yet. As of today, we haven't found it. With you and the listeners, I am always glad when Thanksgiving and Christmas are over because those 2 days are usually somewhat difficult for me to handle.
I want to take advantage of the fact that we've got a camera on over there with you right now, and it's something we've not been able to do, and hopefully we'll be able to edit this portion in to where our podcast, not podcast, but YouTube viewers will be able to see this. But hanging down behind you is something we have not seen before at this camera angle. I know what it is, but I think that this is one of the really good examples of why you need help, and you need it consistently for a number of things that you do to stay alive. Do you know what I'm talking about? What's hanging in the background of your shot right now? It's the brace that is mounted on the railing in the ceiling that you're moved around with. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, it's called a Sure Hands lift system. And it is unique. It's not one of a kind because the company makes them.
I guess my purpose for bringing it up is that is clearly not a device that you can jump up and get into. I mean, you're loaded into that.
I
right?
cannot. I wish, and I have thought many hours trying to figure out if there's any way I could independently get in that lift, and there is not, because it takes the caregiver that picks me up using that lift has to use both of their hands, one to hold the hooks under my legs so the tension is there to hold them up without them having to hold them, and the other hand they use to push the button, and then they have to push me over the bed or over the commode in the bathroom for me to be able to use it. So it is just physically impossible.
All right, that's an example, and that's just one example. There are dozens of other things where your care providers will help you and arrange and allow you to make things happen that you need, that regular people, I think is the way you refer to regular people, take that for granted. Yet that is just one example of why you have to have a caregiver there to help you use a device. And that device is the only way you can do a lot of the things that you have to do every day.
Right. And all the devices that we're referring to are devices that were purchased by the state of Texas for my benefit. In other words, they were kind enough to buy the things, but we have to have people here to operate the things they bought.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're thankful.
Absolutely, we are.
Yeah.
Without these devices, I couldn't do any of this because of that lift system that you can see in the background. I am able to get in and out of bed, get on the commode, get in the bathtub, et cetera, and no one has to lift me. I'm never physically lifted by human energy. Everything is done by machine here in my home.
But you have to have assistance.
But somebody's got to operate the machine.
All right, Roger. Here is the uncomfortable truth. And folks, I don't know how many times Roger and I have been in a conversation and it gets to the yow but. And the yow but is, and Roger is openly concerned about this, how understandably he does not like to talk about it. Because you have the feeling that if you so much as bring it up, then it could capsize his boat. I mean, it could rock his whole world. And that is the day that sitting around a table down there in Austin, Texas, and Roger has written letters and he has made phone calls and he has sent emails. And for years, he has met with people and telephone conversations and all of this. And the subject of Roger Dykes comes up. What are we going to do about this Roger Dykes guy? I mean, it's not like there is a growing number of people like Roger who are in the exact same situation. The difference is Roger speaks unlike most cerebral palsy victims. Is it okay if I use the word victim?
Okay with me.
All right. Roger speaks. Roger has got a podcast, and I don't think they're excited about that, Roger. If you want to know the truth, I'm saying, what are we going to do about Roger Dykes? He's up there in West Texas, and he's got a podcast. He's talking to people all over the world. And he is not painting everything we're doing here at the state capitol necessarily, although he is thankful. He is not painting us in a positive light because apparently there are some places where the gears have begun to grind on the program that we have him on. Now, they may or may not be ready to do anything about it right now, but who's going to talk to Roger next? And, oh, yes, why don't we just decide that Roger needs to be put in a care facility? He needs to lose his home. He needs to lose his setup where he teaches and trains and works with people. He needs to be somewhere where the podcast would be next to impossible. It is a way of shutting Roger Dykes up. And that's not a pleasant thing. And Roger so many times will caution me when we're talking privately and says, we just really can't go there. We don't need to talk about that on the podcast because it is easy. I mean, if you want to make this whole thing easy for the boys in Austin, it is easy just to say, Roger, we're taking you off the program and we're going to suggest that you get in a care facility. And that's the only way you're going to survive. Now,
one of the advantages of me staying in my home, in fact, the only advantage, the only reason, and I don't mean to be unkind about this, but I won't say the only, that might be a little over the top, but the major reason that this program exists is because from the state's perspective, it's cheaper to keep me in my home under the system we're working with now than it is to put me into a full-time care facility. So, and I want the listeners to understand that it's not because I'm well liked, well loved, or well appreciated in Austin one way or the other. I haven't even been considered. The consideration is money. It's cheaper to do it this way. And so when you need extra money to make this work, and extra time to make this work, and things like that, that ultimately cost money or more money than it costs now, you have to be careful, because once, and I don't know where the line is, so I can't stay behind a line that I don't know exists. But once the cost of keeping me at home surpasses the cost of putting me into a facility, the facility wins. So I have to always consider and be careful that what I'm asking for is not necessarily that much more expensive, because the reason for all this is money, and the state is saving money and yet keeping people in their home. I think that's a wonderful idea, but I'm just saying the motivation from the state's point of view isn't the client's comfort or their liking or not liking the system. It's strictly a financial decision that this program was put together to try to keep us out of the nursing homes, because that's very, very expensive.
Roger, one of the things you were saying to me just in the last 24 hours on a telephone call, you explained to me, he said, it gets down to the same thing all the time, and that is, I've been in this program longer than the people that are involved in it and running it now, longer than any of them. So you would think Roger would be a pretty good guy to talk to. Say, well, Roger, what do you think? Believe me, he's got ideas. He's got answers for that. But Roger, you were saying to me, the truth is, with all of the research that you have done, with all of the letters and the emails and the podcasts and telephone calls, all the people you've talked to, the truth is, sitting right here, right now, today, you don't know who to talk to.
That is exactly right. I have talked to various individuals who gave me the idea that they were going to be helpful. Now, I don't want to be overly critical simply because I don't know what's going on. They haven't checked back in with me to say, hey, here's what we're working on, or here's what we've accomplished. So I'm always left wondering whether I'm waiting for them to do more, or that they have even forgotten my name and phone number.
But Roger, let's make sure everybody understands that what you're talking about is not weeks. It's not necessarily months. It's even years. You've been waiting for responses.
Right. And also, it's once you have spoken to these people and they've responded, whatever they've done, or say they're going to do, and there's no way to get back into them and say, hey, what are you doing? Because you don't want to rock that boat. Because then if they say, well, look, Roger, if you're that impatient, well, you'll just have to do it on your own. I'll be totally lost if that ever happens. So I'm caught in so many different ways, by bureaucracy, by thinking of the people running the programs that I wish I could talk to. I had this vision, and it's strictly my imagination, but I have this vision that somewhere in Austin, in a deep, dark, canvassed room, they sit in darkness with candles making these decisions, and no one knows who it is or how it's being done, and how much I would enjoy being put in front of that group and say, let's talk.
Roger, we're in the fleeting moments of this episode of Roger Dykes Just Sayin. But folks, I would like to point out one more thing. There are all kinds of podcasts that you can listen to. This one is absolutely real, and it is happening in real time. Roger Dykes is an actual live living person, and he is telling you what he struggles with daily, which could be tweaked, could be changed, could be made to work better. But of course, somebody would have to listen to him. And that is the first thing we are suggesting. Roger, I'm glad you joined us today.
I'm glad I could be here. I'm glad you could be with me, and I'm also glad the podcast listeners are still listening to us.
They are. They really are. There's a growing number of people, and we go, who'd have thunk it, man? I mean, really. But Roger, you got a lot of fans out there, and we are thankful to all of the folks that listen. There was a time back, I don't know, weeks and weeks ago, where we asked you, hey, you people in Texas, would you call down to Austin and talk with this person or that person, tell them, heads up on Roger Dykes? And they did. And there was a great movement there, and it was really exciting and felt good. And we got close to some things happening during that time, and the listeners to this podcast were a force in all of that. And we're thankful for them.
Yes, we are. Very much.
Well, Roger, we'll need you to get back with camera working and ready to go, and we will begin to work on the editing process on this podcast, because we're gonna make it a little more interesting visually for the folks watching on YouTube. You have a new YouTube audience that is growing, and so, man, thanks for making special time. We had to kind of move things around this time because of the holidays, but thank you for making yourself available to us.
Well, I'm glad I could be here, and I hope that what we've said helps people understand the situation better so that they can help us in the future come up with some solutions.
All right. Roger Dykes, just saying. See you in 3 weeks.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, podcast listeners.
You've been listening to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. If you'd like to get a message to Roger, his Facebook account is listed as Roger Dykes. Become a friend, or you can send your questions and comments to rogerdykes51@gmail.com. That's ROGERDYKES51@gmail.com. Our podcast reveals a new episode every 3 weeks. Join us next time for our next episode of Roger Dykes Just Sayin. I'm Michael Shawn. On behalf of Roger Dykes, thanks for listening.